Hi there, folks. Saber4 here. Coming to you this morning with a look at Luke Skywalker. We're going kind of meta adjacent today. We've got a couple of different things still in the queue that I'm working on, including Admiral Piett and a Boba Burn deck, but wanted to come to you here with a Luke Skywalker deck that I think is a good competitor with a lot of the things in the meta, though he might not be the same percentage as some of the others. So, while you're here, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Helps grow things well. We'll look at what we're going to see in this video is we'll talk about why Luke Skywalker and why double red. We'll look at the week 1 deck, the turn 1 play, the mid game, the Luke flip, and the end game, and then we'll cover our sideboard for this deck and some final thoughts. So why Luke Skywalker and why double red? Luke is a later deploy, and he does not have access to ramp, so he's a 6-cost leader that is going to keep you from ramping into him. Now, that is a disadvantage in many cases when we start talking about things like Django, Quinlan, Han that can get there early, when we put Sabine out here, who is even 2 turns earlier than that. So Luke has some liabilities with this, but he's still a very aggressive deck because of the nature of this play. Fighters are cheap. You can put down multiple fighters in a turn, and then that allows you access to his ability pretty well. And because he directs pings, something like this epic action on Tarkintown is a natural combo for it, which allows me to pick off one of their early plays and kind of keep my space board a little bit wider. He plays well into Django. He plays well into several other of the decks that are out there in the meta. And so I think that Luke is in a somewhat unique position, even as a non-meta deck, to do very well. There's argument to be made that Kaz can do this just as well, though I think that the flip for Kaz, though earlier, is a little bit less impactful than the flip by Luke. Anyway, let's take a look. This is the week 1 deck that I've got right now, and I'm going to go through some of it card by card to explain, and then we'll go into some of the other plays. Now, Luke Skywalker, as we know, allows us to deal damage to our target of choice if a fighter has attacked this turn. So he is a little bit of a dirtle action, but you need to have done something already in order to get that damage. Fortunately, we have a lot of fighters. We did use some pilots in this deck to kind of boost some of the things that are out there. We've got a nice little trick in this deck that I'll talk to you about in just a second. But a couple of big inclusions here: Hotshot Maneuver and Trench Run. Hotshot Maneuver, I'm trying to maximize some of my on attack, and you'll see that that exists on 4 of the fighters that are here and on Poe Dameron. And so what you have is the ability to play some of your cards out and then use things like Hotshot Maneuver to help increase your damage into your opponent's units and shrink the board. Hotshot Maneuver allows me, every time I attack with a card, allows me to attack with a card that has an on-attack ability, and for each on-attack ability, I deal 2 damage to a different unit. And then Trench Run, as long as I've gotten one of these units, if I sink a pilot onto them, or if I'm, later game playing Luke, and Orbital K-Wing is a great one for this, especially against wider decks. When you play Trench Run, it's a +4/+0. Again, I think that Kaz is better at this because he can turn off some of these effects, but it's still a really great way to pump in damage. It's only a 2 of because it's a little bit of a risk. 2 drops in here, Anakin's Interceptor, black 1. You've got a couple of ground possibilities that are also pilots with your Determined Recruit and with Frisk. You have your Green Squadron A-Wing, your Gray Squadron Y-Wing, and your Red Squadron Y-Wing. Now, those Y-Wings are your favored turn 1 plays. And the reason for that is that they will also start ticking that clock. Both of them have on-attack abilities that deal damage. The Gray Squadron deals 2 damage to a particular target. It is of your opponent's choice, but it can be to a unit or the base. And then the Red Squadron Y-Wing does 3 indirect damage, and that can be spread as your opponent chooses. Shoot Down is going to help us deal with threats to our fighters in space. Stay on target is a nice +2/+0 pump that, if we are attacking base or dealing damage to base, is going to give us card draw. Now that's doubled if we wind up using that along with the Y-Wings, because if we use that with the Y-Wing, the on-attack ability has the ability to do damage to base, and then the card itself can attack base. And if you do that, you can wind up drawing 2 off of this, which is amazing. Biggs is in here as a pilot. He's good in the fighters. He's much better in that next card up, the dilapidated ski speeder, because that does 3 damage to itself when played. It's a nice ground unit. 3/4 is a good stat line. I'm perfectly fine with that playing in the ground. However, put Biggs on it, and now it's a 5/8 with 3 damage and grit. And so you really have a nice early unit with the ability to swing for 8, making a big threat there on the ground. It gets buffed from red 3. Red 5 that's right there is the ability to stack not only multiple on-attack abilities, but also has the ability itself to start cleaning up some units that you've done damage with. You've got the ability here with Orbital K-Wing and Corrigan Turn to be able to ready most of your units a second time, as well as Aggression doing the same thing and dealing with a little bit more of the cleanup aspect by dealing 4 damage. You can also draw a card off of it. You can do a lot of different things with Aggression. And in this deck, because we're playing double red, that gives me access to that straight out. Poe is the biggest thing in this deck. He's a 5 cost. You're still going to go beyond him because you're going to want to play Luke if possible. But he's the biggest thing in our natural deck at 5. Now, Poe also works with Hotshot Maneuver because he has an on-attack ability. And so you can discard and play on-attack, and Hotshot Maneuver will wind up with an attack with Poe. I can do 2 damage to a unit, 8 damage to a base, or 2 damage to a unit, 2 damage to another unit, 6 damage to whatever else it is I need to clean up. Poe is my best card on the ground by far in the natural form of the deck. Now you'll notice the sideboard that's over here is not the complete sideboard that we'll see later on. There are some substitutions that I put in that as well, but this is one version of the sideboard, which gives us a little bit more ground presence if we need it, bringing us up to things like Wrecker and to Cassian Andor, who can come in with a smuggle cost if you want to give you a late ready unit. Bo-Katan is a nice addition to this as well because she gives you a 3/3 since you are playing double red. Turn 1 play. The preference, as I said earlier, there are 14 2-cost fighters. It is nearly impossible that you're going to miss one. A couple of them are dual use with pilots. It's more likely that you're going to see 2 of them in your opening hand than that you whiff. I mean, that's just the way this deck is set up. Your preferred play, unless you are playing into something that is going to ping and destroy the unit, your preferred turn 1 play is a Y-Wing. The reason that you have that, I've already discussed a little bit, is because of those on-attack abilities. These 2 cards, even though they are a 1 attack each, have the ability to start doing either direct damage of your opponent's choice or indirect damage that's unpreventable and really start moving the board for you. So you can attack with this, drop one of these, claim initiative if you have the opportunity, attack with it. It deals the damage. You can Tarkintown and remove the thing, and then you can come back at the end of the turn and wind up with your ping. So you have a lot of ability with these fighters to push damage and to do it very early. But these are your preferred plays if you think they're going to be able to stick. Alternate plays here, the A-Wing, Anakin's Interceptor, and Black One. So you've got a ton of options. Do we pass? If we're playing into something and we don't think we're going to be able to stick that turn 1 unit, we might consider passing. I would consider passing into Quinlan, even though he might take that as an opportunity to go to the 3-resource turn. I would consider passing into Quinlan because that would give me the chance to drop one of these guys down, and he'll either have to play behind curve in order to ping it, or you'll have the opportunity to kind of bait with a 3 resource play the second time around. As far as ships go, you know, when I looked at all of the different ships that we had the option to play, we want to turn one play to stick, and the cap on these 2-cost fighters is 4 HP. Now, there's only a couple of them that have it. 3 of them total, 2 of them in heroism. Only one of them is playable turn 1 because Pirated Starfighter will bounce itself back to your hand. If all you've got is one of these Y-Wings and you play it and you bait Tarkintown out, great. Because you're going to have a lot more plays once you get to the 4 resource turn. You're going to be able to put 2 cards down per turn pretty easily in that next couple of rounds. So, the mid-game, I'm attacking with my fighters. I'm utilizing that leader ability. I would like to keep a Y-Wing alive if I can. But we also have some defense for our fighters. We have shoot down, we have aggression, we have Tarkintown, we have pings, we have Red 5, which can deal damage to cards. So we have a lot of things to help keep our fighters alive and keep things going in the skies for us as much as we need. We have Hotshot Maneuver, and if we have Hotshot Maneuver with one of those Y-Wings out, we can deal 2 damage, deal 2 to 3 damage. It only hits for 1. But we come back and we ping with Luke. And so we really have a lot built in to make things happen. Shoot Down is a great card in this against something that's playing space, because if you swing in with a unit and then you ping a unit, you get it below health, you play this, you deal the last 3, you deal 2 damage to a base. And then finally Aggression, which is to help deal with, this helps deal with pilots. This helps deal with any upgrades. This also can deal direct damage. It can ready one of your units to swing again. And if you have, you've played Hotshot Maneuver or you've played Red 3 and you've already swung with it and you come back and you play Aggression to ready it on, you've already swung with Red 3, your opponent thinks you're safe, you're not going to do something, you ready it with Aggression, you swing with it again, you clean up some board. Aggression is a great card, and one of the reasons why we're playing double red here. The Luke flip turn. Now remember, he's on 6, and you're going to have to get to 6 naturally. The best case that you have for this is that you flip into red 5. And if you can flip into a ready red 5, this enables a massive swing from Luke. Hotshot Maneuver now has 2 on attack abilities. Luke has 3 damage. You deal 2 damage to a damaged unit. So you really can add up what you're doing with that Luke unit in addition to swinging for 7. And so he's a big, big target. The backups for where you're going to put Luke. Black 1, which gives you an on-attack ability, and an Orbiting K-Wing are my 2 favorite targets. The K-Wing is nice because the K-Wing is a 4/4 Saboteur, and that's going to give you the ability to swing with your leader even if they try and put a Sentinel out in front of you. And so you've got, and Luke will still do the 3 damage to a unit. And so you can still use Hotshot Maneuver on it and deal 5 damage to a unit. So Luke still has the ability to do a lot of cleanup if he's in a K-Wing. Poe Dameron is in here, and that can turn on Black 1's ability. I don't wind up playing with it that often, but it still exists. And so Luke in a Black 1 still has 2 on attack abilities, even if Poe Dameron is not on the field. Hotshot Maneuver also works with his attack, as I said earlier, which means that if I can Hotshot Maneuver and discard a card, I have the option to deal 10 damage with Poe, and kind of spread that out as I need to clean up. He is a definitive cleanup crew in this deck. And finally there in the end game or even in the early game, because this is a big bait target for somebody to try and get to, is that Dilapidated Ski Speeder with Biggs. It's a 5/8 grit with 3 damage. It's a great target for stay on target. Lets you draw a card and deal 10. So it's a huge hit for you there. The sideboard. Luke is specific to fighter units. There are around 20 total in the pool that you could use. When you combine everything from red heroism, plain red, and just heroism and plain cards. I've included the ones that are, I think, the best fits for this. I did not go up to 9 resources, and so Profundity is not on this list. You could chase 9 if you wanted to. I don't think it's wise. I think you're going to close out games before then, and so it doesn't make sense to me. I would rather have the 2 cards in hand and stop at 6 resources than go up to 9. I might consider, if I have Wrecker, I might consider going back up and resourcing one more time. But beyond that, everything else is here to play light and to play small and to cap at 6. So I didn't include Profundity in this list. Disabling Fang is good in here, but I've already got a lot of upgrade hate just kind of built in. Ketsu is another possibility here if you wanted a little bit more of a ground presence. But the Disabling Fang Fighter will allow you to strip out and upgrade if those become something that you are concerned with. Spec Force Soldier is another good one in here. It provides a 1-drop, something that you're almost always going to be able to play, even in conjunction with another of your ships. And it's going to turn off Sentinel for a phase. And Sentinel is one of the things that can kind of hurt us the worst in this deck because our ships aren't very big. The HP cap, as we talked about, for fighters is very low. And so getting around that HP cap in a big Sentinel can be very difficult. If we turn Sentinel off for a phase, and we can do that a couple of different times in our deck, we can usually pop through with enough attack and use some of those things like the on-attack abilities to clear out that Sentinel without having to deal with it directly. Bo-Katan, the When Defeated I don't really care about. It's nice to have, but Bo-Katan is in here because I'm playing double red, and so I get access to a 3/3 for 2, which is something that red usually doesn't have access to otherwise. Cassian is great, as we said, for his smuggle ability. Getting him in ready can give us some reach. And although we don't have access to ECL here, Wrecker being able to deal 5 damage to something as he comes in and then sit around as a 7/6 body with Overwhelm, he's your cleanup crew on the ground. And your opponents are going to have to decide what they're going to go after. And do they want to clear off Wrecker, spare themselves some of the overflow damage, or do they go after another threat? So that's it. That's what we got for this Luke deck. I think, as I said, that this is a meta-adjacent deck. It's not going to be one of the big 5 that I expect for this opening couple of weeks, but it is something that plays well into most of them. And so I wanted to get it out there to let you guys have an opportunity to kind of see one of those fringe decks that might work its way into play. Keep a lookout this week. Especially if you're subscribed, you will see a couple of Piett decks come up. I'm working on 3 of them for the video, so I'm working on 3 different versions of Piett that'll be in a much more comprehensive video, as well as a Boba Fett deck with a Boba burn. So until next time, take care.